Thank you and good morning. Thank you for your time that you dedicate for this session. So I'm coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina and working in Vive Žene for 22 years. So my presentation, I will try to explain what we are doing in a term of reconciliation connected with statements that rehabilitation is precondition, not just for reconciliation, but also in case of Bosnia, prevention of the conflict, because we have history of the wars in Balkans, especially in Bosnia. So as most of you know, that the war in Bosnia arise from differences. I'm sorry, I have to manage from this side, okay. That arise from differences, so our task is to lead a process through which differences will be brought out, acknowledged, and dealt with in a way that permits them to exist without threatening the whole system. For 22 years, Vive Žene worked on rehabilitation of war victims on individual level, healing of the torture victims, and on community level. So rehabilitation, we consider, is the first step in the long road towards reconciliation. Work on reconciliation is our next step that has to be achieved. So as many theories and many statements about reconciliation, I use one of, I find, and what we use in our context, that's a very hard and very complex term, mainly because it's not just a result to be achieved, but that's also the process through which we have to pass with our beneficiaries. So basic definition of reconciliation is that a process through which society should move from divided past to a shared future. I will briefly tell about Vive Žene, a concept of work. From 1994, when we start to work, we developed the work of Vive Žene from, you can see on the next slide. So we start to work in 1994 during the war. We work on individual level, so we provide very fast and efficient psychotherapy for the refugee. In that time, they were from Eastern Bosnia, mothers with their children. But later on, all those years, we developed our program from individual. We still work all those levels. So individual direct rehabilitation with the victims is still happening in our center. And multidisciplinary team provide comprehensive psychosocial therapy treatment. Then when the war were finished and when refugees went back to the Eastern Bosnia, we continue to work with them in communities they live. So we try to help them this reintegration program, reintegration process, but later on also we work on reconciliation, and that will be the part that I will focus in this presentation, because psychosocial group, in one of our psychosocial group, we use the do no harm framework, which is a topic of this presentation, where and how to use do no harm framework. So after a level of community work, we also work with professionals and strengthening institutional capacity. So we work a lot with professionals from the governmental institution, social worker, mental health professional, judges, because we have a big program for witness support unit, and we work all over the Bosnia and Herzegovina. So last level that we are doing with other organizations, not alone, because we are by profession, we are a psychotherapy center, but we are working with other networks on lobbying and advocacy for the rights of the victims. So our psychosocial in community, it's very different. In each community, we follow the needs. So in some, for example, in the middle of Bosnia, we are working with Victims Association, war camp survivors, but we do only psychosocial work. In other communities in Northeast Bosnia, we work also with pedagogical. I'm sorry, I have to move the slides. In Northeast Bosnia, we are doing psychopedagogical work with the groups of children, because it was for us very important to involve this kind of work because of prevention of transmission of trauma for the next generation. Then we provide and organize roundtables with different topics that is common interest for each community. Also medical, legal counseling, psychosocial groups, such as rehabilitation of trauma victim, breaking, isolation. I mean, that's all, because it's very broad, this program. In each community it's different, but I will try to be very fast and to focus on do no harm in Eastern Bosnia. So the difference between middle, northeast, and east, that's the different program that we implement. In the context of reconciliation program, that's our second level of the work. do no harm approach help us to be simple and effective, but only, that's what we experienced, only if it is synchronized with psychosocial trauma work. You cannot just come and use any manual that's produced or just come in some community and start to work, do no harm. That's our experience. Maybe some other part of the world have different experience. So it helps us to encourage victim association to jointly identify dividers and also connectors. So inter-ethnic group that we start in Northeast Bosnia, it's a group of Jadar. They have 21 members, women and Bosniak nationality. So I have to explain the Bosniak are Muslim people, Muslim women, victims, and those communities, they were affected by the war, and now they have to live together, and they live together. But we try to help them to overcome the past and to, as I said in the beginning, to have a shared future in their life. So second group is Serbian nationality, Orthodox, and it's 16 members, women. So all of them, they are victims of torture during the war. Some of them were raped in that region that they are now living. But I have to emphasize that 6 members of the group, Jadar, Bosniak women, were beneficiary or were treated in the Center of Therapy and Rehabilitation in Vive Žene. So this is, for us, very important part that we want to explain that the process of establishing inter-ethnic group in Bosnia, it's very long and very slow process. So it was hard for us because that's part of Eastern Bosnia is Republika Srpska, and Vive Žene, we work in federation, so it's different ethnicity. So when we start to work in Eastern Bosnia, for us as people from federation, we was not very welcome there. So, but because some of our clients, as I mentioned, 6 of them were in therapy, their children went in that school, so we start to negotiate with the teachers, and we start first. Entering point for our work was psychopedagogical groups with children in Konjević Polje, that's B, that's mean Bosniak children. So we needed 2 years to start to work with the adults, with the groups, after work with the children. Then from 2010, slowly, somehow, we intervene in the Serbian population, Orthodox population, because there was connection among children, and for us it was also one of the canal that we can move in the Serbian schools. So on 2010, from 2010 to 12, we work separately with the group of Bosniak and group of Orthodox. And to explain difficult situation, when we choose therapists who will work on psychopedagogical work, because we are very mixed in Vive Žene, so we choose the names for you. It doesn't mean anything, but the names in Bosnia is your identity. So people can recognize you by the names. If you call Selma or Jasna, they can measure who you are. So we also take care about that because it's very sensitive situation there. And 2 years we ran 2 different groups, Bosniak and Orthodox. In 2012 and 2014, it was first time after 2008 that we could start to work in inter-ethnic group, that we connect, that they are together in the group. And just I will explain later why we start in end of 2014 to 16 this do no harm framework we implement. So when we start this inter-ethnic group, the main objective of the group developed in the context of joining groups in ethnically divided communities, that's meant facilitation, dialogue between victims association. Next to the main objective, the group had following specific objectives. You see there, to share experience, war experience, to work on traumatic experience, to share difficulties in family, community, and life. And in the end, we try to develop joint activities. So next slide present the results of 12, 13, and 14. And you can see that most of the symptoms gradually decrease during the first, but mainly during the second year. Only anxiety has risen in the end of the first year, but the reason for that we find in sharing difficult experience, because in that moment group discussed about fall of Srebrenica, and also it was census planned in Republika Srpska, so that was important things for both groups in the community, so that's what I said. So when we analyze and see that functionality of the group improved, that allowed the group members to function better in their lives, families and communities, and also improved because when we work with the trauma experience with them, so fear disappear among two sides, so they become more open, and it was very important for empowerment of the groups. So from 2014 up to now, we are working and we are implementing this Do No Harm framework, and we discuss with the groups. We try that they identified what is dividers and what is connectors for them, and you will see in the next slide there is same things that divide them also connect them on some way. So dividers for both groups were word trauma, of course, losses, fear, school system. And I said school system because it's very small villages, but they have completely different school program. So children, they are trying, the school management, they organize school schedule that they are never together on the breaks. So different schedules of the classes they have that they don't meet, the Serbs and Bosniak. That's also trauma that they both groups experience. For the Serbs, it was Kravica massacre that occurred in Serb Orthodox Christmas in January 1993, and Srebrenica in July 1995. But also we faced a problem in September 2013 that Bosniak children refused to go in the schools because of the Cyrillic letters and Cyrillic that they have to learn Serbian language. Even we understand each other completely and we speak almost the same language. But if you want to divide the people, you can always use some of these differences and to emphasize. So connectors, what we find among them during 2 years is that all of them, all are women from rural area. Some of them were victims of domestic violence. And the losses, you see that we also put, it's also dividers. In the beginning, it was a big issue discussing about the losses, but in the end of the group work, when they understood that all of them are mothers who lost their sons or children, so that's what they share. So the pain and trauma connect them on some way, so it's the same for both groups. For any person who lost members of the family, it's the pain. Trauma don't have a color. So, and also we find that for them in this small rural area, it's a joint agriculture activities is something that could connect them. And we discussed about them, about the position of, because they grow up in a culture where female children were seen as less important, so that's connect all women. Then most of the group's members lost some of their relatives, then domestic violence, and as I said, agricultural activities. So during the group work, they connect when they, then psychotherapists, when they work in psychosocial group on drawing war roadmap, so they, both groups could draw the similar road because they had similar experience, just on different sides. Then they organized together round table the present mental health situation in their region because they become aware that also the family member of them, they're also facing mental health problems, so that's also connect them. And gender inequality was the biggest topic and issue for all the women, and they connect very fast on this issue. And we support them to organize. It was very strange for, especially for their husbands, when they connect. First of all, they are different ethnicity, and then they have joined forces against domestic violence issue in the village. It was not very popular. But they developed, they tried to develop network for the case of domestic violence, and Vive Žene, we support them in that. So we link professionals from that region, from mental health institution and Center for Social Work, that they can intervene in a case of domestic violence, because we as NGO, we do not have authorization to come in the flat, in the private place of the persons, but when we connect with the mental health institution and Center for Social Work in this network, so they have right to intervene in a case of domestic violence. Of course, some of them use still individual counseling of Viva Žene intervention. So this is some of the, I just want to emphasize, this is after 8 years of activities. I'm very brief and trying to really to present. I hope that you will have questions that I can, that we can deeper discuss about. So this is in the villages of Bosniak women, and then later in a village of Serbian women, round table and network meeting. We call that enhancing connectors. That was from 2014 up to now. So we organize agricultural activities, and they organize round tables, like improvement of participation of women in local communities, then improvement of economic independence of the women. And in the end, the biggest event for them was this agricultural fair that we organized in their place, but also in Tuzla. And that was the result of these 8 years of work, that they came together, they produced these domestic agricultural products, and for them it was first time that they go out from the village and come to Tuzla. Tuzla is not very big town, but it's, for them it's big town, and they put together the stand. You see that this was really for newspapers and for media. It was really interesting in a big place in Tuzla, that all of them together, and journalists came and asked how they reconcile, why they are together, what's happened with the past. And they was very good, because some of them, they also give interviews in the media. So in the end, I present only North Bosnia, but as I said in the beginning, Viva Žene work all over the Bosnia, in Eastern Bosnia, Brčko district, Central Bosnia, that's different place. So prior to participation in psychosocial group work among 74 members, only 32% of war victims believed that all ethnic groups were equally victimized during the war. Evaluation demonstrate after conducted psychosocial groups that 92% of the participants stated that they better understand, so they just said that they better understand others' narratives, and 56 stated that they are no longer told that forgiving members of other ethnic group was impossible. They are not sure, but they think that they could think about reconciliation. So our statements with this do no harm and all our work that we are doing is, if war victims successfully change their attitudes and behaviors toward people of other ethnicity and demonstrate through these results, they can be role models of peace builders. And for us, it's very important. I mentioned in the beginning that Bosnia had in Second World War, there was also the similar stories in Eastern Bosnia. And when Tito regime came, no one was talking about that. So we are afraid, and there is other research all over the conflict zones, then if we don't work on trauma and reconciliation, maybe the risk of new conflict is very present. Thank you.